Hey TikTok, this is Gary Hamilton, your conspiracy scientist, and I have finally decided this is it. I have finally got to the bottom of the whole loosh. These are old maps, very old maps. Here, and look at on this one, you see a guy sucking in or blowing out, whatever. To me, that's the loosh that this first video is going to explain. And then, of course, Robert Monroe, a page of his book, is going to explain it even in greater detail, and the creation of Earth and humans. And then I'll have some pictures at the end showing the actual entities sucking in the loosh. And here's another old map. You can see the four of them outside of it, and they're all, sucking in loosh or whatever. It shows them either breathing out or sucking in something. They obviously knew about this way back in the day, and they just figured, you know what? We better not let society know that they are living on a loosh farm. So, I don't know, the last 300 or 400 years, they've changed the narrative. Because let's face it, would you really want to know that all you were was food for another dimension? Definitely not the story of creation that you would want to hear or be a part of. See here, look at all these faces around the old maps, or I don't know what this is, longitude, latitude, I don't know what it is, but it's just an old map from 1500s, 1300s. So they all knew about this. Now, sure, is it great to know? Here's another one. You got the landmass in the circle, and then them on the outside sucking in the loosh. So this is all going to make sense to you at the end when you see my actual photographs of the so-called stars. And there's a video that I ran across. Here's another map with, again, sucking in the loosh. I mean, you can't tell if they're inhaling or exhaling, but they're inhaling, in my opinion, since that's what Robert Monroe says, and that's what this next video that I came across this weekend, and you got to listen to it. This is just the last 5 minutes of it. But here it is, Fear, Laughter, and Loosh by Understanding Conspiracy. That is his YouTube channel. And just listen to this last 5 minutes of this video along with Robert Monroe's page in that book, and you'll be convinced.
So, a clown can either make you laugh, or it will have the other opposite violent reaction of making you cry or recoil in fear. It doesn't matter what the result is, it gets its energy. So it seems like the clown is the perfect creation for this purpose. You get those people who, in the shrines, let's say, who dress like demons. We call them clowns, but what they're really doing is dressing like the ancestor spirits of folk traditions. It's the same practice. Then they go to these children and they either make them laugh or make them cry with fear. And what they're doing while channeling the demons through them is they're giving the energy to the demon. The demon then feeds off the child's laughter, or it feeds off the child's fear. So I think there's something to this, and all this came from just a random thought of seeing my son scream with pain to then suddenly laughing with joy within a split second, almost as though it was the same emotion. So yeah, what do you guys think about this concept? This concept that, laughter or sadness and fear produce the same energy in an individual. And as long as that energy is produced, the demon is fed. So we find, in society, comedy is a huge deal, and just like every other industry in the world, it's as corrupt as the next one. And the things that they have made funny now are the most rude, crass, and evil things imaginable, and our sense of humor has become darker and darker. And maybe there's something about that corruption of humor in people, which means as long as people are laughing hysterically, or are crying hysterically, it's fine, Because hysteria is another point of this. It's paradoxical laughter. The inability to stop laughing once laughing, is to be hysterical. And it's interesting. I could go on about this probably in more detail for a long time. But one thing I will say, which is interesting, is mania is a form of bipolar disorder where people erratically switch from insanely happy, to insanely sad and all sorts of other things, But once people have this bout of mania, we call it, where the emotions are riding really high and incredibly low in such a rapid succession for about an hour or so, it's common that fatigue is a huge problem for people who suffer from this mania. And once their mind has been racing, it brings insomnia with it as well, a huge lack of sleep. And it takes a long time to recover from mania. And it says here, so you can end up feeling physically and emotionally drained during the recovery as well. So, whether the demon is forcing somebody through some kind of mental illness to have bouts of extreme highs and lows and emotions to the point where they end up feeling utterly drained of all their energy, or whether they are using their paid actors in the world to make somebody laugh hysterically, or make somebody cry hysterically, or to torture somebody and cause pain, or to, pleasure somebody and cause immense pleasure. It doesn't matter to the demon. As long as the energy is produced, they will drain you of that energy. I mean, this goes back to Hellraiser as well, now I think about it. These Cenobites who basically live in hell, or the other dimension, which is like a nightmarish realm, well, they love to either cause extreme pain or pleasure to individuals, and they find extreme pleasure in the pain, hence why they tear themselves with hooks and rip their own flesh off and do disturbing things to themselves, because they gain pleasure from it. But they've elevated it in the world to a priestly order. And they have a religious concept of this pain and pleasure. It's not simply just about sex, it's actually about something serious to them. And I do believe what I'm saying here, it may be hitting on this point, that pain or pleasure to them is where they get their energy, And it seems to have been referenced everywhere in the more extreme adult content like It or, Hellraiser, as I just said. But even in the children's programming such as Monsters, Inc., it's a big deal. So yeah, the clown can manifest extreme happiness in an individual or extreme fear. And it doesn't matter which one it generates. The clown is happy. The demon is happy. The demon within the individual who is channeling it by wearing the clown costume gets its food. So yeah, I'll leave that there for you guys to ponder and think about, guys. I didn't think this may be warranted being an episode of the Nephilim Look Like Clowns series, but it's definitely a concept that I've been mulling over recently, which I think is just fascinating and an interesting piece to add to the puzzle. Thanks for listening.
Now, as most of you know who follow me, the first thing that I saw that made sense to me as far as what I am taking pictures of that are up in the sky was when I read the book Far Journeys by Robert Monroe. So I'm going to read to you an encounter between Robert Monroe and an entity when he was doing his out-of-body experience. Now, what you're about to hear is the creation of Earth and humans. Now keep in mind, this is Robert Monroe during one of his out-of-body experiences when he met up with an entity who had told him what he had always heard was the creation of Earth and humans. And this is how it happened. And it didn't set well with Robert Monroe, and it's not going to set well with you either. But this is the story where he found out that we are a loosh farm.